It's good. Doncic wins the game at the buzzer.
The Board Bettor podcast.
What up, everyone? Welcome into the Board Bettor show. It's been a little while since we've jumped on one of these. Unfortunately, a few things popping up in life. So be it, but we are back, and I am joined by a very good friend of mine who I haven't had the chance to talk to in quite a little while. So I'm glad that we could do it on this show. Miss Kate Constable, how are you doing over there on your side of the world?
Josh, I'm good. It's so good to see you and finally talk some hoops with you. It's been quite some time, but I'm excited. So thanks for having me on.
No problem. You are doing a whole heap of great stuff on your side of town, like I said, and we can tell everyone where they can find all that great work later on in the show. But yeah, it has been a little while, unfortunately, but I'm glad that we did get a chance to do so here today. And as per normal, everyone knows we will have our usual segments. We'll jump into our homework review to kick things off. Our scouting report's going to be looking at the deadline day drama that went on around the league, because I haven't had a chance to talk through it yet. So we'll talk through how we think teams went in terms of upgrading their rosters and what that means going forward. We'll give out our best bets as always, and then we'll do everyone's favorite squad ride where Kate can pick out the best bet from the Discord channel. No pressure, Kate, but they do hold grudges if you don't pick the right one. But they're doing well. Yeah, they're doing well. Good for them, I say. But let's get started from the top. Let's go into our homework review. Take a look at what we think is potentially lagging in the marketplace and a good opportunity for us to get ahead of it. My one really quickly off the top is going to be the New York Knicks, because I think that offense is being severely undervalued right now for a couple of different reasons. They're obviously a pretty hot and cold team by nature under Thibodeau, but I think right now that they have all their pieces back, I like the acquisition of Josh Hart as well. I thought that was a little bit shrewd. Helps push pace as well with that second unit. But mainly you look at how their offensive metrics have performed over the past fortnight. They are severely underperforming in terms of output. And I think that it's just going to be a matter of time before that sort of clicks and they start getting the consistency in terms of scoring that their numbers should be hitting at the moment. And we saw a little bit of that against Utah. It'll be interesting to see how that goes against the Nets today. I'll talk about that game a little bit later specifically. They've got another game against Atlanta before we head into that All-Star break, and I think that's going to be an absolute track meet with both teams scoring for fun. But just looking at their starting five, in particular with Mitchell Robinson out of the lineup, we're talking like 130 points per 100 possessions, which is an elite number. The flip side that, though, they're giving up like 127 points per 100 possessions, and that's like the third percentile in the league. It's just atrocious right now with Jericho Sims in there. It doesn't get better with Hartenstein in there either. They're giving up like a 65% opponent EFG percentage, which is quite literally the worst in the league for starting five rotation. So that to me leads to potential points for this team. But like I said, specifically with their offense, which I think is going to click in a pretty big way over these next couple of weeks, and a chance for us to get ahead of that. Their shot quality numbers have them in the top 10 offensively. Like I said, they're underperforming in terms of output, but that should come around today. Kate, what are your thoughts on the New York Knicks right now in terms of where they're going forward? Is this a team that you actually think is going to make any sort of noise in the playoffs, or is this just going to be the same old Knicks who kind of just flip between being the hottest team in the league and the coldest team in the league every other week?
Yeah, I'm not too confident in the Knicks going deep into the playoffs this year, just kind of as they always do. I mean, this is still the same Knicks team pretty much that we've seen over the last couple of years. I do like the addition of Josh Hart. I think he will be great off the bench for them, bring in some added offense. And to your point of this being an overs team going forward, I mean, if you think back to the beginning of this season, they were kind of an overs team early on. They played at a faster pace. Brunson really push the pace for them. And so similar to how the Knicks, they kind of go in waves of winning a ton, losing a ton, winning, like all of that. They're kind of doing the same thing in terms of their pace, how they're scoring, their efficiency, things like that. And so this is one of the times that you could capitalize on the Knicks offense being great right now, the pace that they're playing at great, and then their defense not so great. So, I mean, who cares if they win or lose the game? If you're betting the over, all you want is, points and points for the other team as well. So I think that's a great spot or a great idea kind of to keep in mind, is that we're seeing this kind of the same type of play that we saw early in the season when they were hitting a lot of those overs, and the market wasn't quite used to that early on, and maybe still isn't quite adjusted at this point either.
Yeah, I think there's probably been a bit of an overcorrection now because of that little slump that they went through, where they were struggling to score consistently. And like I said, I think it's just a matter of time before we get them sort of leveling out in terms of their offensive output to match what it is that they're actually creating in terms of the looks, in particular in and around the perimeter. With Brunson and Randall obviously taking the large bulk of that. But I think the secondary scoring behind them is probably what's going to help propel them to being a little bit better offensively than what the marketplace has them rated at right now. But like I said, I'll touch on them a little bit later in the show as well, and their matchup today specifically. But you wanted to talk about the other New York team who made a splash in terms of what they did with their roster. And I think they retooled pretty impressively, all things considered. But what are you looking at with the Brooklyn Nets right now?
Yeah, this will be interesting to talk about this game because they're playing each other tonight, and we're kind of on opposing sides in terms of what we're thinking for both of these. So I thought the Nets, what they've done with the situation that they're in. I mean, you don't want to give up 2 all-stars, but it was time for them to kind of blow that thing up and start over. And what they got back from it, I thought was great. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, 2 fabulous players. But I think what we're going to see from Brooklyn going forward is unders more so, because they've lost a lot of the scoring. I mean, KD, Kyrie, I know KD's been out for a little while, but those two, their offensive production. And then you bring in guys like Spencer Dinwiddie and Mikal Bridges who can score, but are they used to being number 1 options? Because that's kind of where they're at right now. So it might take a little while for them to adjust to, running the show and being the go-to person. I mean, I think Mikal Bridges had 18 shot attempts in his first game with Brooklyn, and that's more than he's taken pretty much his entire time in Phoenix. So he may have some big nights and knock a ton of those down. He's fully capable of it, but it's just going to be an adjustment period from, being maybe the 3rd or 4th option to being the number 1, number 2 go-to guy. And then on the defensive side, Mikal Bridges was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year last year. Cam Johnson plays decent defense. Dorian Finney-Smith is an upgrade on defense. So you're bringing in players that try on that side of the floor where, Kyrie, that wasn't quite his forte. KD's an underrated defender, I think, but obviously hadn't been in for a while. So I think we could see some unders going forward for Brooklyn, just based on the way that their roster has turned over and how it's going to kind of respond over these next couple weeks. I wouldn't say that that'll continue on for the entirety of the season, but initially that's kind of what I'm going to be looking at there.
Yeah, I completely agree that that's going to be the long-term output for this team, is just this really sort of stagnant offense at times where they kind of struggle to create consistency in terms of looks. And I think the pressure that Dinwiddie's now got on his shoulders to now go back to being a primary shot creator and playmaker versus what he was in Dallas should come to the fore. And yeah, I don't want to say concern. My only question mark right now with the Nets is, do we get them riding this sort of momentum into the All-Star break where it's a bunch of guys who have basically been cast aside and are playing with a chip on their shoulder, playing up-tempo basketball, running the floor, playing hard, hustling hard, but as a result, creating a lot more possessions and scoring opportunities, that we get a few games that go over, and then that overcorrection comes back in a big way where, like you said, we're just going to get this avalanche of unders for a team who has elite defensive talent. Like you said, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith is as good as any sort of wing trio defense you can start in this league right now. Spencer Dinwiddie is a larger guard as it is. He has the wingspan. He has the length to really disrupt on the perimeter. Nick Claxton, as we know, is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate so far. So, you couple it all, of course, with Jux Vaughn, who's a defensive-minded coach. So I think it's all going to come together really well at that end of the floor in a pretty big way, given time. But whether that comes off initially or not, I think they might just ride a little bit of momentum and a little bit of that sort of, chip on the shoulder mentality that helps them probably overperform offensively. At least that's what I'm hoping, not just for today, but I really do want them to in this next week, just so that we can buy back on that unders, like you said, in a pretty big way, because I think that's the way that ultimately it's going to fall for them. And it's unfortunate. They just, like you said, I think they did very well in getting back what they did. All things considered, when you trade a superstar, you never get back, $1 worth for every dollar spent. But it has left them extremely shy. I just think of natural scoring and playmaking. And, you've got guys like Cam Johnson, who's a terrific sort of catch and shoot guy, can space the floor really well, is a good scorer in his own right. But you don't really have anyone creating for him, and he's not going to create his own shot. So that's where it sort of comes undone for them a little bit, I think. So for me, yeah, we'll touch on that game a little bit more detail, but I love the long-term unders look on the Brooklyn Nets for the fact that I think they have an elite defense, a ceiling to be an elite defensive team in the league, and their floor on offense is probably in and amongst, I think, the bottom feeders in the NBA, and we'll probably see that at some point where, things do come undone for them a little bit there. But speaking of trades, let's get into our scouting report, because we haven't had the chance to talk about the trade since it all went down and the deadline day drama, because I haven't had a chance to jump on one of these. The Brooklyn Nets, like we said, I think it's fair to say they did well, right? I mean, you're never going to be able to get back what you give when you're giving up the talent like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I think it sets them up pretty well long-term to look at retooling the roster. They have really good trade assets. I mean, these are all players that contending teams would love to have. So they're in this really interesting predicament, I think, come the offseason, where it's, do you try and retool with what you've got? Do you move all of these and go through a full rebuild? But I don't think there's a wrong answer for them. So I think it's fair to say they came out on top despite losing superstar talent, right?
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm not sure they're going to do the full rebuild. Based on, I heard that some team offered 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. Like, if they were going to tear it all down and do the full rebuild, I feel like you would take that. So I'm not sure they do, but they have their options are open going forward. And their experiment, bringing those big 3 in, it didn't work. And it's time to move forward. Like, what else can you do? You kind of, at some point, just got to throw your hands up in the air and move on. And that's what they've done. And I thought what they got back for that was very good pieces that they can build around. So, I mean, I don't know. Grade, I'd give them maybe a B, because they failed with the other thing. They lost 2 All-Stars, didn't even get an All-Star back, but yet they're probably very happy and feeling a little bit refreshed and relieved to be moving on from that whole situation, because that was just a mess in Brooklyn for 2-3 years.
Yeah, it clearly was not ever really coming together for them. It looked like it might for a moment there once Vaughn did take over, and Durant and Irving seemed to be clicking, and they were playing at an elite level, and Kyrie decided to be Kyrie, and obviously the wheels fell off very quickly after that. But I think that's a pretty fair rating, because you can't give them an A when they've given up 2 all-star, superstar talents, top 20 players in the league. But they did do as well as they could do. One of the questions in the chat, should they try and move on from Ben Simmons, or do they try and make it work? I think they want to move on from him, but that might be the worst contract in the NBA right now. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't think there's anyone being paid as much to do as little, or that offers as little with such a low ceiling than what Ben Simmons does, because his confidence is shot. I don't think it's coming back. He can't score the basketball. He's extremely limited in what he provides. If you move him to a team in the playoffs, he becomes unplayable in the playoffs, because in half-court offense, it's basically his team has to play 4 versus 5, because he's just a complete non-factor, and they can just leave him on the perimeter to do nothing. Can they move him, Kate? I think is the real question. Not do they want to?
Oh, I think they 100% want to. Can they? I don't think so. I think they would have tried to before the deadline if they could, because he's not providing any value to the team whatsoever. Like you said, you can just leave him on the perimeter. He's not an offensive threat at all. Honestly, his defense typically in years past has been very good. I would say it's been fine, mediocre. It hasn't been anything that, he's standing out on you can't trust the Aussies, yeah, for sure. Standing out on the defensive end, and that's like totally making up for his lack of offense. That's not happening either. So they have to get creative in how they move him if they can. But honestly, who wants him right now? I don't think there's anyone in the market for Ben Simmons. Like, that's probably more of the issue than the contract. It's like there are no takers for Ben Simmons, and I don't blame any team for not wanting him either.
If you can't look good when you have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant on the floor with you, you're not going to look good in any environment in the NBA. So, I think they're stuck with him ultimately, and they're going to have to try and make it work to some extent. maybe his future is just off the bench and running a second unit, and, being as influential as you can be on the bench. But that's just a bad contract and a bad situation. I'll pull up and I'll run through some of like the bigger trades anyway, at least. The Lakers, Minnesota, Utah 3-way trade. The Lakers got D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt. That is a huge win. Like, I don't think there's any other way to say it. That is as big a win as they could have possibly hoped for. I think Minnesota did well in acquiring Mike Conley. I think he's perfect for that team. He's exactly what they need in terms of veteran presence, who understands his role as well. And he's going to be the guy, I think, that gets the best out of Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns when they get back, as opposed to having a point guard who is a score-first option anyway, like D'Angelo Russell was. So that's a win-win all around. The Jazz win because they get worse, which is ultimately what they want in the short term. Are you on board with the Lakers now being a playoff team, or do you still think they need to prove a little bit before it's safe to say that they're definitely going to be there come April, May?
I think they need to prove a little bit more. If I had to bet on it today, I would say that they make the playoffs. But I still think, like, why is LeBron James sitting so much? Why is he sitting today? Is he hungover after the Super Bowl yesterday? We all know he was there. So why are you out? Your team need to start stacking up wins, because you are quite a few games back. That having new players on your team isn't all of a sudden going to equate to wins immediately. I like what they did adding these, because it kind of addressed the issues that they needed, which was spacing, on-ball creation outside of LeBron doing that, and then having to rely so heavily on AD and LeBron. So, these new players coming in address those issues. So I think they're going to be better, but it's going to take a couple games to start figuring things out, and rotations and all of that. So get back in the lineup, get healthy. Like, LeBron's sitting out every other or every 3 games. You're not going to make the playoffs if that's the case. So I'm still not totally sold on the Lakers, but they got better. And I think that if they can put it all together, they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I don't really have a lot to add. I just find it hilarious that, remember after the Boston game when they were so vocal about saying every win matters in our situation, we can't afford to be having games lost because of refereeing decisions. And then they all went and sat the following night. So how important is every game if you're not even going to play it? That's the part that's frustrating me the most about the LeBron James and Lakers situation right now, is the contradictions coming from within their own camp. They obviously think that they are positioned well enough to find a way into the playoffs if they're comfortable sitting him out and sitting other guys out in certain situations and back-to-backs. I think they're ultimately going to be in the play-in. I don't think they're going to be able to make up enough ground to finish in the top 6. And the play-in's a dangerous situation to be in. I mean, they're probably going to be one of the better teams in the play-in, so they'll make the playoffs. But one-off games are just dangerous situations. Any team can shoot 50% from deep in one game, and all of a sudden, you're out. And all of this was for nothing. And, you're in a really big situation going into the offseason where a lot of questions are going to be asked, and the direction of the franchise needs to be questioned accordingly, because LeBron's window isn't very large right now, I think it's fair to say. And as good as he's been, Father Time's undefeated. So, it's not going to be a forever thing for the Lakers. They're going to need to figure it out. They need to figure it out quickly. But in terms of the trade itself, it's an A+. It's a win of the highest order for them. I'm very surprised. Westbrook. And you go, that's exactly. Addition by subtraction, right? So that's definitely going to be one of the trades I think that Pelinka holds on to whenever there's any references to whether he's done a good enough job, because how he managed to swindle those 3 guys and only give up Russell Westbrook, Juan Toscano Anderson, and 1 first-round pick without giving up the other one is very impressive, it has to be said. Other ones around the league, a couple of interesting ones. Josh Hart to the Knicks, I said I like. And I like Cam Reddish to Portland. So that's a win-win for both teams. Portland gets a scorer and a shooter that they so desperately need. The Knicks, I think Thibodeau is just going to love Josh Hart. He's like the perfect Thibodeau player. He just plays hard on defense. He runs the floor on offense. He attacks the basket aggressively. So that's definitely a win-win situation there. The most interesting one that made no sense to me, Jakob Poeltl goes to Toronto. Toronto doesn't end up trading any of their other pieces like they so blatantly tried to do. They've now tried to backtrack and say that they're happy with what they have, and the reason they kept everyone is because Kevin Durant moved and now the East is wide open. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. The East is not wide open. It's still the same 3 teams ahead of you in Philadelphia, Boston, and Milwaukee. You're not any closer to those teams because you acquired Jakob Poeltl. What do you think of the Toronto Raptors situation and them going forward? Is it just delaying the inevitable? Are they going to blow it up in the offseason anyway, and they just didn't get what they wanted in return right now?
Yeah, I thought the trade deadline was a total loss for Toronto. They should have done more. They're going to have to kind of blow it up in the offseason because of the free agents that are likely going to be leaving at the end. But yeah, the Jakob Poeltl thing, I don't understand that a whole lot. Like, it didn't move the needle. He's not an all-star. It didn't move the needle a ton where all of a sudden they got a center that they desperately needed, and now they're going to be a contender. Like, it just was a tiny move. It almost felt like they were doing it just to do something. That way they could say, well, okay, we tried. We were, active in the market, all of that. But it was just confusing. I was expecting them to make some big moves. And we just didn't see that at all. So I think that's a loss for them. I don't know what direction they'll go in this offseason. It's kind of one of the teams that I'm a little just confused on and haven't been playing on a whole lot because I can't get a good grasp on them and I don't know what their future looks like.
Yeah, no one seems to know. I don't even think Masai knows himself as to what the hell the future holds for that franchise right now. But like you said, it's going to be interesting now because you potentially lose Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr. to free agency anyway. I mean, you're better off trading them for anything. The rumors that they weren't happy with the Clippers' offer for VanVleet because they wanted more. At some point, you kind of just have to swallow your pride and say, let's just take what's on offer because something is better than nothing in the long run.
Right.
So just a really strange. Yeah, exactly.
And just kind of swallowing their pride. Like, they said, this isn't working. We'll take what you're going to give us and build from there. And the Raptors were very reluctant to do that. And I think they're going to figure out that was a mistake.
Yeah, I think it's an ego thing, right? You have like the need to win every trade. You can't win every trade sometimes. Sometimes it's better to not win the trade and just get off of what you have so that you can actually move forward in the right direction. So that's a weird one for sure. Just quickly doubling back, actually, obviously the Brooklyn trade we spoke about, but the Phoenix Suns getting Kevin Durant, getting TJ Warren, are they officially the best team in the West come playoff time for you?
I don't know. I go back and forth on that. I still really like the Denver Nuggets and everyone that they have and the way that they're playing and kind of have gelled this year in comparison to past because they're finally healthy. The Suns worry me because Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker are all very injury prone. I mean, Booker's missed quite a bit of time. People talk about Durant and CP being the ones that are injured most, but Booker's missed at least a month this season, at least a month last season. One of those 3 go down in the playoffs or around it. Like, all of a sudden, Phoenix is in trouble because they don't have the depth. They just got rid of their depth. They got rid of their defense. I don't think it's all going to be all sunshine and rainbows for Phoenix just because Kevin Durant comes in there. I mean, he is, yes, arguably the best player in the league. And offensively, he can do wonderful things for you. But the depth concerns me and the health concerns me of those 3, honestly. So I'm not sure. I still think I put my money on Denver right now.
Yeah, I think Denver is just being completely overlooked by everyone because of years gone by and the history and the playoffs and how it sort of comes undone for them. But you can only judge them off what you've seen this season now that all the pieces are back and healthy. And defensively, they keep getting better. And as long as they make strides in that department going forward, they don't need to be an elite defense. They just need to be competent because the offense is so good that it's going to win them games on its own right. And if there's going to be certain playoff series where obviously they're going to need stops in key situations. And again, we're talking about needing 1 or 2 key stops. We're not talking about a team that needs to get multiple stops in order to stay in the game because they're going to be able to create whatever it is they want on the other end of the floor. So they're a team that, as strange as it is because they're so dominant in the West right now, but they seem to just be consistently overlooked, I think, by a lot of people expecting them to sort of come undone come playoff time. Concern with the Suns for me is, can they figure it out in a short period of time? It's not been done. Like, we haven't ever seen an NBA champion come together at this point of the season, figure it out in 20-something games, and then go on and be an absolute force in the playoffs. We never even see teams that come together in this way at the start of the season figure it out in their first season. You know, LeBron's Heat team didn't come together in their first season. You know, same when he went back to Cleveland. Like, it doesn't work like that more often than not. As good as Kevin Durant is, I agree with you. I have concerns about the depth as well that they have on the roster. I don't know if this is their season. I think that what they've done is position themselves perfectly for the off season where they can reassess and say, okay, it's time to move off Chris Paul potentially. Let's look at seeing what we can do in terms of getting creative and bringing something else in and filling that void. And then can we get pieces around Booker and KD? Because I think Booker and KD are as good as any 1-2 combination you're going to find in the league. I still think that Devin Booker might be the most underrated superstar in the league. He does everything. He's a playmaker. He's a shot creator. He can score at all three levels, at the basket, mid-range, from beyond the arc. What that helps for Kevin Durant, obviously, is then provides him spacing in the mid-range to operate in the way that he was doing in Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving. And, you know, the ultimate X factor is DeAndre Ayton. What DeAndre Ayton do we get come playoff time? Because if he can actually buy in and engage in the same way he did when they made the finals last time, this is a serious team that is super stacked. Like, there is no team that has someone of DeAndre Ayton's capabilities as their fourth option scorer. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like, if he can play his role to a T, what this team's capable of is scary good. And the fact they got TJ Warren in there as well. The guy's a walking bucket on top of everything else. And he's your fifth option scorer potentially in a closing lineup. So, you know, 1 through 5 is as talented as anyone in the league. But yeah, it's going to come down to a lot of those intangibles, a lot of the chemistry questions and those things down the stretch. So I think I agree with you. If I had to pick someone today, I think I still lean Denver being the better team in the West, maybe. But if it comes together, I think that the talent on the team is too good to completely falter. Like, I don't think they're going to bottom out and bomb out in the first round of the playoffs. I think this is still a Western Conference final team that could potentially go all the way if everything does click. It's just there's not a lot of room for error right now for them, given the time frame between now and the playoffs starting.
And you can't forget that Kevin Durant is still injured. Like, he's not playing right now. He's not coming back till after the All-Star break. And who knows even then, like, when that happens, there's no date set for his return, I don't believe. So that the 20 games that they have left after the All-Star break could shrink to 15 altogether by the time he actually gets on the floor. So if it all clicks, they're going to be fantastic. They're going to be extremely tough to beat, but a lot kind of has to go right and fall into place immediately in order for that to happen.
Yeah, at least for this season. At least I just want to really stress, like, going forward, they're in a fantastic place. Come the off season, they can retool accordingly. Going into next season, they're in a fantastic place. It's just whether it all comes together this current season right now. 3 top teams all picked up someone. The Milwaukee Bucks got Jay Crowder. I think that's a big tick for them. That's exactly what they've been missing almost since they lost PJ Tucker, is just someone that can play that power forward role. Defensively can be a menace. Offensively can space the floor. If he's hitting his shots from beyond the arc, it's a great pickup for them. The Denver Nuggets getting Thomas Bryant worked out perfectly. Him wanting out of LA, they got a backup big that isn't DeAndre Jordan, so you win immediately because there is now no excuse for DeAndre Jordan to be touching the floor at any time. I think that's the perfect big man to back up Jokic as well and give him a breather. You have someone with size. They can also space the floor as well. He's comfortable shooting the three. I think their offense can run accordingly through him. The Celtics got Mike Muscala. I love that pickup personally. Just another big man off the bench to, you know, depending on playoff series and matchups, someone that can play 5 out, space the floor. You know, we saw in his debut went 4 for 8 from beyond the arc. That's just what he's been doing all season. He's been a lights out shooter, spacing the floor, gives Boston exactly what they need and works perfectly with what they have on deck. So for me, an A++ basically across the board for all those 3 top teams. I don't think any of them lost out in any way, shape, or form. I've touched on, I won't go back and I won't touch on the Mavericks because I touched on my thoughts on the Kyrie Irving trade. What are your thoughts on that one really quickly?
I think on the court stuff, I think it's great. I think he and Luka together I mean, you kind of have to pick and choose who you're going to double, and I'm not sure you
Yeah.
really can anymore. And that was, what people did on Luka, and that's what slowed him down. It didn't slow him down much, but now you can't do that. Offensively, they're going to be great. I worry about them a little defensively because Luka is someone that you can target in the pick and roll. Kyrie, someone you can target in the pick and roll. Even Christian Wood is not the strongest defender, so that worries me a little bit. But I think that they could be sneaky good. Not even sneaky. I think they just could be good because of what they are offensively with those two on the floor together. I just hope that Kyrie actually stays on the floor. That's kind of my only issue with him. But if you're talking just basketball, I like the move.
It's kind of like what you mentioned, or we were just talking about with Denver, where defensively, they just need to be good enough. They don't need to be elite at that end of the floor because their offense is going to be so good.
Yep.
And in a playoff environment, like you said, teams just double Luka, but you can't do that when you have Kyrie Irving on the floor. It's simply not going to work. It's going to be too many open looks for everyone. If their shooters can keep knocking down shots, like Reggie Bullock is shooting 43% from beyond the arc this month. If he's shooting at that range, if Tim Hardaway Jr. is shooting 39% from beyond the arc, like this team offensively, again, is capable of just anything. And they're just going to have to find ways to get enough stops. And it's not like they were good defensively anyway. They were 24th in the league, like on the season. They've sucked so far. I don't understand people that think that this trade was terrible for basketball reasons. For non-basketball reasons, I get it. But for basketball reasons, it just makes too much sense. Last team I want to touch on before we get into today's action. What do you think of the Clippers trades? They got Eric Gordon. They added Mason Plumlee, which is a really interesting one. And then they got Bones Highland for nothing, which was, for me, like the best possible move for them and for Bones. But yeah, interesting for them. They, I think, picked up 3 really big pieces for their rotation. Obviously, they were never really going to get a superstar unless they managed to wrangle Van Fleet. But what are your thoughts on what they've acquired? And then what do you think for them going forward? There's been flashes where it looked like it all came together. They had Kawhi, Paul George playing together. They won 8 of 10. They looked like the team that we all sort of anticipated. They've now taken a backward step because Ty Lue says he wants to manage their minutes again, going into the All-Star break at least. So it's just going to be so hard to get an accurate read on this team through the regular season. But I think obviously Ty Lue's confident in what he has, understandably so. The addition of Plumlee, I think, is a big win. You have Plumlee, you have Zubac, you have 2 very good centers for the playoffs. And you can, again, match up dependent on who plays the bigger minutes there. Eric Gordon gives them another pick and roll option, another veteran presence who's better defensively, I guess, than someone like Luke Kennard, but can still space the floor. And Bones Highland could be the biggest winner in all of this. Maybe he's somewhere where he's finally going to be given the opportunity, I think, to shine, because we know what he can do offensively. He can score the ball as well as basically any point guard in the league. His defense has always been his biggest Achilles heel. Perhaps being in a system that is so well-rounded defensively can help hide those deficiencies a little bit for him. But what are your thoughts on the Clippers acquisitions? And then what is their ceiling going forward into the playoffs?
Yeah, I was a little confused by Bones Highland going to the Clippers just because they got him for so cheap. And then I read something that he was not good in the locker room in Denver, so maybe they just wanted him out of there. I don't know, but I thought that was a great pickup for the Clippers because he can score. And if there's ever a night when Paul George or Kawhi aren't scoring, throw him in the mix and he can make something happen. I also really like Mason Plumlee backing up Zubac. Zubac is in foul trouble. It seems like all the time. And now you have a player that was a starter on his former team coming in as a backup. So, I mean, the strength there is there. So I really like that for them. This Clippers team, I'm kind of just over them. I'm so sick of them because of the ups and downs of them. Like, just play your players. This is the NBA. What? So you're going to get to the playoffs and all of a sudden you're going to be playing these tough series, and are you going to need a rest because you've needed a rest every 3 games throughout the regular? Like, I don't know. I don't really understand that. I guess maybe it's just as a fan and viewer, I want to watch all these guys every night out there. So it just frustrates me. But I feel like they need to start gaining some serious momentum heading into the postseason. So maybe post All-Star break, they'll actually start, turning it up and playing, but they can put together spurts, but They're just spurts, and spurts aren't going to win you a championship, and spurts aren't going to get you past these, tough playoff rounds against the teams that we have now in the Western Conference that are pretty stacked. So the Clippers, they're just, I don't know what to think about them. I don't bet on them because they're so up and down in all of that. They're kind of one of my do not bet teams, but I like what they got prior to the deadline. I think Plumlee will be great for them. I like Bones and Eric Gordon. He's a good player to have on your roster, veteran presence, plays hard. So I think they got better. I'm just curious to see how much better and how that all plays out on the court.
Yeah.
Because they,
exactly. We probably won't.
Well,
we're not going to see how it plays out until the playoffs, probably, because there's
right.
just always going to be someone in and out. Like I said, it just makes it really hard to get a read on exactly what their true ceiling is. I'm still dying on the hill that this team is absolutely as big a threat as anyone in the West, because I think that when the talent is there, they just provide so much at both ends of the floor that they're just a nightmare matchup for basically all the other teams around them. They're the only team that has two elite on-ball wing defenders that can basically guard anyone. Their two superstars are so comfortable in the mid-range that it opens up the perimeter for guys like Bones and Eric Gordon now and everyone who was there before that. I do think it comes together. I will continue to die on this hill. I do think, though, if it does fall apart for them this offseason, I think that they do finally pull the plug on this experiment and go a different direction entirely, and try and retool as best they can going forward. But interesting to see how that one plays out. And like I said, I'm unfortunately going to die on this Clippers hill. It's killed me so far. I've been on them basically every year.
They were my pick to win the title this year coming into the season. I was high on them too.
It's the only championship bet I have in my pocket. It's not one I really want to have right now, given the way the other teams are performing, but it's the only one I own.
Yeah. And maybe they are a team that can just turn it on easily in the postseason. I mean, you've got two superstars, so that's always the recipe for success. So
I still look back at that season when Kawhi did tear his ACL, and that playoff series against Dallas, that playoff series against Utah, they looked like they were going to win the West. You can't change my mind. Yep. If Kawhi was healthy, they beat the Suns that year in the Western Conference Finals. Yep. They were playing that good, especially Kawhi Leonard. Like, he was playing out of his mind. So I've died on Clippers futures basically every year since these two have come together, and I'm going to do it one last time and see how it all unfolds. But let's dive into today's action, Kate. Let's take a look at best bets for today and see what's on offer. My one's there on the screen. And like I said, we'll double back. We'll talk Brooklyn, New York, because I took the over. I took the over 220 in this one. I understand why the market's come down from 222.5. Just because it's probably going to be a game with very few possessions. But I just think offensively, both teams have a way to score. The Nets, one thing I noticed their last game, they took a shit ton of threes, a lot more than what they have been doing. The Knicks' Achilles heel is their perimeter defense. They've been allowing teams to shoot 40% from deep for the past month now, allowing teams to take 40% of their field goal attempts from beyond the arc as well. So it seems like they're happy to give up threes and almost willing to just live with the outcome. The Nets are going to be happy to take them. And I think that they have enough guys that can score and get hot from beyond the arc as well. Cam Thomas obviously been a microwave scorer off the bench for them lately. So if they do their part, I'd like the Knicks offense to do their part in return as well. Like I said, I think we're going to see a little bit more from them offensively. I got 227.5 on the unders in Orlando, Chicago. That's 224 at the moment. That's kind of been the story of my season. We get these really good market positions. They don't necessarily come to fruition the way I anticipate. But I like this under a lot. I think that the Bulls are in a real situation right now. Kate can probably attest to that. Things are just falling apart really quickly for them. It seems like there's some serious locker room turmoil there. Latest reports I was reading is that it's basically Zach LaVine versus Billy Donovan, and the players have sided with the coach. So that's always an interesting situation. I still think their defense is probably above average, which is strange to say. Orlando's offense is so hot and cold and inconsistent, but I like their defense a lot as well, to shut down what Chicago should be looking to try and do in that mid-range today. They're not a team that exactly spaces the floor particularly well. I grabbed Minnesota plus 7.5. I actually have no problem playing plus 6.5 either. That number's still too high for me, and I'm a Dallas believer, but we're pricing them as if they're like the best team in the NBA already. They haven't come together just yet. I think that should be closer to 5. I still think Minnesota's really underrated in the marketplace. I like them a lot going forward. those are my 3 bets for today. Do you have any disagreements with those ones before you jump into what you're on?
No, I don't at all. And I didn't bet the Nets Knicks game. So I'll root for the over there with you. I wanted to wait and see this Nets team one more time, get another little sample size out of them before I started planning on, just so I kind of know a little bit more of what to expect. The Bulls, I almost think Orlando could win this game outright. They're plus 5.5. I don't trust anything with the Bulls right now. They are an absolute mess. Probably one of the messiest teams in the league right now, just in terms of everything going on. So I like that play. And Minnesota as well. They put together a stretch recently where they looked really good on both sides of the ball. 7.5 points. That seems like a lot. And maybe the market's overvaluing Luka and Kyrie initially. With that number. So yeah, I can't complain with any of those. I grabbed the Nuggets at plus 1.5 earlier today before that line flipped.
That was my regret, was not grabbing that as well. I saw a plus 2 as well and was like, I really should do this.
Yeah. The Heat have their injury reports wild. You don't know who exactly is playing, and their offense has been very inconsistent lately.
It's bad.
It's all over the place. You don't know what you're going to get from them. Yeah,
let's just call it what it is. It's a great defense with a bad offense.
Yep.
And I think that they're winning so many of these close games in a manner that's just not sustainable down the stretch of the season. I think we're going to see a lot of these close games go the other way for them. And when you're talking about the hottest offense in the NBA, they don't even have to be at their best. But if they're slightly above average, I don't know how the Heat keep up in a game like this. And there's no Tyler Hero tonight. That's he's officially been ruled out. So I'm with you. I think the Nuggets are absolutely the right side there.
And the Heat are coming off of 2 very close games. They won both of them, but they were close in overtime with the Magic in their last outing. So I don't think the Heat have a chance tonight. I also took the over 238 in the Lakers-Blazers game. This one I'm a little iffy on. And now LeBron James is out. So that doesn't make me feel any better. But so far, the Lakers offense has been able to put up points when it's playing poor defenses. And that's basically what the Blazers are. They're top 5 in offense over their last 5 games, but they have the second worst defense. They've allowed 122 points in 4 of their last 5 games. It's just, they're not getting any stops. And the Lakers aren't, I wouldn't say night in and night out. The Lakers are a great defensive team. So I think both of these teams could be pretty porous in terms of allowing a lot of points. And D'Angelo Russell, I think he'll come in and make an impact and be able to distribute the ball in ways that the Lakers haven't really had much this season. So this one is the one of the 2 that I'm kind of like, oh, was that the right play? But we're going to ride with it and see what happens. And so playing the over there.
Yeah, so my numbers gave me the over as well. And the only reason I didn't play it was, like you said, I don't know what to expect with the Lakers right now. And part of it is they played a much slower pace against the Warriors last game. Now, is that just a one-off, or is that them going forward now that they don't have Russell Westbrook, who is like an Energizer Bunny on cocaine when he's on the basketball floor running up and down? So, does that mean that, they're now, their standard pace of play is sort of far below what it was prior, or are they going to go back to being that sort of run and gun team, even with D'Angelo Russell there, like you said, and having him be the playmaker that they so desperately needed, especially for someone like AD, who would just go missing in games because no one could get him the ball where he wants it. Like, you have a proper point guard now who can likely set you up as you want, who can run pick and rolls with you efficiently and effectively. I think it just comes down to how dominant is Anthony Davis going to be tonight. If he is, then there's going to be no problem for them scoring, and I think that the Blazers can return serve themselves. But the pace of play will be a really interesting one to keep an eye on, because I think that could be one where if it's slow paced again, we might have a good opportunity going forward to take some unders on the Lakers, which is not something we have been able to say basically up until now.
Right. Yeah. A lot of information could come out of these next couple of games, just in terms of how these teams look with new pieces on the floor. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's, and it provides really good opportunity both ways, right? It's difficult, just as difficult for bookmakers to put out a fair price as it is for us to sort of gauge what to do. So trying to gather as much information as you possibly can put you in good stead going forward for these next couple of weeks, and the first week coming out of the All-Star break in particular, I think. But they are our best bets for today. I will tweet all of those out as well so that everyone can get mine and Kate's for the day ahead. All right, Kate, it's the one time that everyone actually tunes into the segment and pays attention. It's time for Squad Ride. Let's do this thing, Chris.
You're very confident, I'll say that.
But you shouldn't be.
All right, Kate. I'm going to read out to you what the Discord chat has put forth as their best bets for today. You're going to take a moment to digest them. You can talk out loud, talk through them if you like, and then you're going to give us what the official squad ride is that everyone is betting today. So no pressure, but everyone's hard-earned money is going to be on what you say.
Yeah, no pressure.
Are you ready for this?
All right. I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's start with a couple of player props that have been put forward. Jared Allen over 16.5 points today against the San Antonio Spurs. I think he can do that in his sleep as long as he plays enough. That's obviously going to be the biggest question mark because the Spurs, the worst team right now against the spread anyway in the NBA. They've gone 0-10 ATS, their last 10, and they're just absolutely spiraling. Mikal Bridges over 18.5 points against the New York Knicks. Like you said, he took 18 field goal attempts last time out. If he can somehow do something similar, like you're not asking for a lot to clear that total given the potential usage and shot attempts there. And then a couple of sides. We have the New York Knicks first half, -1, which is always a favorite of the Discord community, is riding the Knicks first half before things go to shit with Thibodeau down the stretch. We have the Chicago Bulls first quarter -1.5. They've been pretty reliable in the first quarter. It's those second halves that are really hurting them. We have Minnesota, Dallas first quarter over 60, and Washington, Golden State first quarter over 57 points. So out of all of those, first quarter plays, first half plays, or player props, what stands out to you as... Oh, no, sorry, we had one more, which is the Lakers money line. But yeah, I'll let you decide there. I'm not going to influence your decisions in any way, shape, or form. You tell me which ones you like the best and what we're officially locking in.
Yeah, I'm not playing the Lakers. I don't trust the Bulls, so I'm not playing that one. I kind of like the over in the Mavs Wolves first quarter. Mm-hmm. That's intriguing to me. Jared Allen, I think he could hit, 16.5 points?
Yeah.
I think that's, he could do that fairly easily. I just don't know if he plays enough to do that. Like you said, I mean, Cavs are 15-point favorites in that game. If that one gets out of hand, I think he finds himself on the bench pretty early in the second half, fourth quarter. So I'm not going to do that one. I think what I'm going to do is Mikal Bridges over 18.5 points. I kind of like that one.
I like it too.
I think he continues to kind of assert himself as the Nets being his team going forward and continues to shoot quite a bit. So I'm gonna take him. I mean, he could put up that number in Phoenix with Booker, Ayton, and CP on the floor as well. So why not as one of the Knicks leaders? We'll go with Mikal Bridges over 18.5.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. That's probably my favorite of the ones as well. And I also do like that Wolves Mavs first quarter over 60. I think just given the fact that, like we've already spoken about the offensive potential that the Mavs have, but I also think that the Wolves are still severely undervalued that end of the floor. So Mikal Bridges over 18.5 points, the official squad ride pick. A good chance as well for our good friend Zachariah to finally get one of his picks on the board. He's 0-2, not that anyone's keeping track. But Kate, if this one does not cover, be prepared for the backlash.
You guys can come for me.
They will. They will come, and they hold grudges forever. And we are very grateful to have them here in the chat nonetheless, though. But Kate, like I said earlier, you are doing a ton of amazing work your side of town. I do appreciate you taking the time to come and join me on this side of town and talk basketball once again. But for those that haven't seen all the amazing work you're doing this season, do you want to let them know where they can find you and yours?
Yes, I am working for BetQL right now. It's a radio company. So doing a bunch of radio shows for them. You can find me on Twitter at Kate Constable. It's where I post a lot of my picks. And obviously when shows go live, things like that, you can catch all that there. I also host a show on Saturdays, college basketball, doing some of that this year, which has been fun. So Twitter is kind of where you can find me. And you can get all my info and see all the things I'm doing there.
Yeah, so shout out to Des as well in the chat. Hopefully he tunes into your college basketball because he could do some help after sending us all the wrong way last season with some pretty forgettable moments in the Discord chat. But again, Kate, thank you so much for joining us today and chatting NBA. Everyone in the chat, appreciate you guys tuning in, and everyone that listens back on Spotify as well. Please do drop us a thumbs up if you enjoy the show and leave us a nice review along the way. But I will be back in a couple of days' time to talk more NBA before this All-Star break. And then, Kate, we will undoubtedly have you back post All-Star break once again as well to talk some more NBA. Best of luck, everyone, with your bets today. And I will speak to you all soon.